Oh, I am Dr. Cinema. I analyze and diagnose movies and explain them to you. Now, this is not that obviously not going to be a horror related video, which is a shame since October, but I just saw this nearly 3 hour epic and I just felt like this is something I just need to talk about. So, a little background. Back in 1982, Ridley Scott, director of Alien, gave us the movie Blade Runner, focused on a Blade Runner named Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, as he's ordered to hunt down a bunch of replicants. And this is considered a cult classic today, even though it got, at best, mixed reception when it was first released. Another main character was Rachel, a replicant that was apparently so advanced that it was difficult to tell if she was actually human or not. And, and of course, another character that a lot of people like to talk about is Gav, who is also another Blade Runner from the original movie, and how he sort of like indicates that that Deckard may or may not actually be a replicant himself. And and at the end of the movie, Deckard and Rachel run off together with the question of whether or not Deckard is a replicant or not still very much in the air. Now, obviously, this is going to be full of spoilers. Full of spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it, then come back. But if you just don't care, then this is spoilers, so this is your one warning. So, without further ado, let's jump back into the world of Blade Runner 2049. The movie starts off with some text on the screen indicating certain events that have happened since the end of the first Blade Runner movie, which is supposed to be set in 2019, such as there has been a blackout period. Well, before that, Tyrell Corporation, the people who make the replicants, was able to extend the lifespan of the replicants from beyond 4 years to an open lifespan. And then, like 2022, I believe, is when all like electricity machines were shut down and just crashed for a 10-day period. And it's hinted that it could have been caused by a resistance full of replicants, but never really confirmed. And there was also environmental crisis, but a guy named a guy named Wallace has, due to synthetic farming or whatever, has managed to solve the world hunger problem, and he was able to get the ban of replicants removed so that he can make his own replicants after purchasing the rest of Tyrell Corporation. And so the former replicants of the past are now being hunted down, the ones that aren't Nexus 9, which is the current model made by Wallace. And that pretty much brings up to today. So we start off with following a Blade Runner, Officer K, as he goes to a farm that's outside the city of Los Angeles. And this farmhouse place is managed by an older model Nexus replicant named Sapper Morton, who is played by Dave Bautista. And Officer K is played by Ryan Gosling. And so they sort of like have a little meet together in the house, and it quickly turns into a fight. And in this fight, we learn that Officer K is indeed a replicant. Wow. Well, unlike the first movie, we just know straight out that the main character is indeed a replicant. And Sapper says some things like, how does it feel hunting your own kind? And something about never actually witnessing a miracle before, and Officer K just shoots him dead. And so pictures are taken of the place, but he notices that there's some dandelions like under a dead tree in front of the house, which he takes as evidence to send back home with him to the LAPD headquarters. And he also notices that there seems to be some sort of like box hidden underneath. So a dig team will come out later to dig up the box that's buried underneath, and Officer K returns back to the LAPD in Los Angeles. Well, that should be obvious. And once he gets there, he's taken to a room where a bunch of phrases and words are said to him. He's supposed to say certain things back. And the best explanation I can have is that all replicants, at least those that serve as Blade Runners, have a sort of baseline, and whenever they go out and kill an older illegal replicant, they have to be tested to make sure that they're still at this baseline, that they're still like under control. And so Officer K passes that baseline test, and he goes back home to his apartment filled with a bunch of other crowded people. And we learn while he goes back home, there's a lot of like negativity that is put towards replicants. And while at this point it's never really officially confirmed, they believe the resistance group filled with replicants will cause the big blackout of 2022 that shut down all machines. And that's the reason why replicants for a good decade were illegal until Wallace manages to convince them to release the band so he can make his own. And there's many different terms and phrases that they give these replicants, like metal skin, I think, is one of them. But he goes into his house, and we see that in his house there's a sort of system named Joy, Joi, who serves as a sort of like artificial companion for other people / replicants that want to feel like that they are loved and such. And so he has some nice time with her before being called back into the LAPD. And it is revealed that in the box that was buried underneath that tree, that there was a bunch of bones that were in there, and they determined it was a woman. And according to some of the markings on the bones, it appears she died in childbirth. But after zooming in on sort of like a part of the pelvis, I believe it is, that there's a serial number in the bone that shows that it was an old model replicant. Wait. Replicants from the first Blade Runner movie, and assumingly the Blade Runners of this movie, have bones? Well, since they were robots, I just assumed they didn't have bones, at least not actual bones like humans. I actually have no idea how they make these replicants. So many questions. I don't know how do robots have bones? They're thinking too much into it. Let's move on. So this upsets the lieutenant supervisor woman, as she says that this could start a war if this information got out, and she tells Officer K to find this child that killed the replicant woman in childbirth and to destroy the replicant. And there's some comments about how he's never killed anything that was born before, and the whole thing about saying that Officer K has managed to get along this far without having a soul. And so he leaves in pretty much darkness. Now, sorry, I just saw, but it's like a nearly 3-hour film, so I have to remember when everything happens in specific order. And so Officer K takes some hair remains and the serial number from the dead woman, and he goes to the Wallace headquarters, and he asks to see if there's information on this old model, and they said that this was pre-blackout, so it's pretty hard to find information, but there might be some in here. And so while Officer K is at the Wallace headquarters trying to find information, he meets a female replicant enforcer known as Love. And this may just be me, but she looks very similar to Rachel from the first Blade Runner movie. I don't know if that's just me, but tell me what you think. But anyway, she sort of helps him. She manages to find a part of like a conversation of like the old eye test from the first movie, and it shows that Blade Runner named Officer Deckard was talking to her, and they note how there was a connection between these two. And Officer K leaves, and Love reports to Wallace, and Wallace is played by Jared Leto, and I already like his role a lot better than I did in Suicide Squad. But Wallace is definitely sees himself as a god, and he calls his replicants angels, but he also calls them a disposable workforce. And he pretty much orders Love to use Officer K as a way to find the child and to bring it to him. And so Officer K goes to an old folks home where a former Blade Runner known as Gaff from the first movie, who sort of helped Deckard with his mission back in the original film, tells him a little bit about Deckard and how he's sort of retired and he vanished sort of as a way to finally being alone. And during this, Love manages to break into the LAPD and steal the bones of the dead replicant woman while killing a mortician forensic expert in the process. And yep. And of course, while she steals the bones, this is of course reaffirming that Wallace wants to figure out how replicants could have children so that he can increase the number of replicants he can make for off-world colonies to sort of gain basically ultimate power. Because there is a high demand for replicants that he says he's just not able to meet. So if he can figure out how replicants can sort of reproduce themselves, that would make him even more powerful. And that's his ultimate goal. And so Officer K returns back to Dave Bautista's farm. I'm just going to call him Dave Bautista. And he finds a little sock hidden in the box along with a picture of a woman holding the supposed baby. And he goes back to the tree. He sees there's a date there that says 6/10/21, which is obviously the birth date of the child / death date of the replicant woman. And so he goes back to his apartment where his lieutenant's waiting for him, and she basically wants to know what he found. He said a sock, basically, and that's really about it. So, and then there's a conversation that they two have in his apartment, and it's revealed that replicants, even though they know they're replicants, have memories implanted in them. I guess it's so that the memories can help the replicants sort of be more loyal to humans and sort of make them more human-like. But it's still odd that we have to give replicants fake memories of times that they've never lived. And so he tells a story about how he had a wooden horse while he was a child, and some kids wanted to take it from him. Goes down to the furnace room area and hides it, and then the kids beat him up, try to figure out where it is, but they never do. And that's pretty much that story. And so Officer K goes to the LAPD and goes into a room where he can look up some information and documents and stuff. And Joy, who is with him because he now has a device that allows Joy as a hologram to appear pretty much mobile now, she begins suggesting the idea that obviously that K is actually the child of this replicant woman. Of course, he doesn't really believe it himself. And so he finds out that there is some DNA with the child and such from the sock, but it's both male and female, so obviously someone has tampered with it. But the best way to apparently track it down is that it's related to an orphanage that's in the San Diego area, which he now goes to. And he goes there, he's shot down by some weird scavenger people. But of course, Love back at the Wallace Corp uses missiles remotely to scare them away and make sure Officer K finds out the child. And he goes into this little orphanage, which is really a sweatshop run by a guy who and Officer K wants him to actually tell him about a child that may have been in this place roughly 30 so years ago. And as they walk towards the office to find those records, Officer K begins to realize that this orphanage place is actually exactly the same as the place of the wooden horse memory that he has, which freaks him out a little bit. So they go to the office, and it turns out that all information from that supposed year that the child would have been there has been ripped out. This freaks him out a little bit more, and so Kay by himself goes down to the furnace room area of this place, and he finds that the wooden horse from the memory where he hid it is actually there in real life. And this, of course, really starts to freak him out. He goes back to his apartment with the wooden horse, which actually has the date 6/10/21, the exact same as the tree at the farm. And so Joy is like I said, this could be really you. You seem too important for Kay. You're Joe. Joe? I mean, sure, there's a chance Kay is actually the child, but we're just gonna call him Joe. That seems so average. Oh, I guess it's Joe. I'm still gonna call him Kay for right now until we get confirmation. So, of course, and of course, he has to figure out that the memory that he actually has is a real memory or a fake one implanted there. And so he goes to the best fake memory maker that's sort of contracted by the Wallace Corporation, which is Dr. Anna Stelline, a girl who she's a woman who is pretty happy considering her circumstances, which is when her family as a child was going to go off to a colony. They realized that she had some sort of autoimmune disease that couldn't allow her to go off world. So her family decided to stay on Earth and to help make sure that she's protected and safe. So she's pretty much in this one enclosure in glass inside a building where she actually does all her memory making such. And she's pretty happy considering the circumstances. And so Kay asks her if the memories she makes for the replicants are real or fake. And so he pretty much analyzes the one memory they keeps having, and apparently it's a real memory, which of course gives him a little bit of an outrage burst. And then he just gets out of the building, where he's then apparently arrested by the LAPD, and he's taken in to do the baseline test, and apparently he's miles off the baseline, which makes the lieutenant angry. And when she demands an explanation, he lies and says that it's done. He killed the child. Straight up ballsy move there, just straight out lying. I mean, I guess you wouldn't need to prove that it's with a serial number since it's unheard of, but still, that's a ballsy move lying. So the lieutenant is satisfied by this for the most part. He still has to take another baseline test apparently in 48 hours before coming back in to do the baseline test again. So he goes back to his apartment, prepares to leave and find Deckard and try to find some information about this. And so he takes Joy with him, shutting down everything in his apartment because he's pretty sure he's not coming back, and leaves. And meanwhile, Love pays a visit to the lieutenant in her office, demanding to know where Kay is. And Love ends up killing the lieutenant and goes through her computer to get an idea of where he could be at. Meanwhile, Kay is getting his wooden horse analyzed to figure out where it came from, which is where he thinks he will find Deckard. And so he ends up going to the desert of Las Vegas, where he takes a little scan around to see what's here, where the heat's coming from, and he walks off to where he believes life is. So he ends up this one building in the Las Vegas desert area, Las Vegas place, And sorry, he goes in the building, takes a little walk around, and there's a dog, and there is Deckard, played by Harrison Ford. The two of them get into a little fight, a little fist punching, but they ultimately just decide to sit down, have a drink, and Kay wants some questions like who is the woman, what about the child, all that stuff, but all he really gets from him is the name of the woman, Rachel. However, even though we do get confirmation that that is indeed Rachel, the dead replicant woman who gave birth to the first natural born replicant, there's really no discussion about how Kay believes he is the child because, according to Deckard, he wasn't actually there when that child was born. So apparently, after the end of the first Blade Runner movie, when they found out Rachel was pregnant, Deckard and Rachel are part of this resistance group thing where all they were doing is trying to hide the existence of this child because they knew they'd be hunted. So while Deckard was off doing scrambling data and such, the other replicants that were part of this resistance were also helped scrambling up information and such, putting the child in the orphanage. And so Deckard wasn't actually there to see the birth of his child. And he doesn't even know whether or not it's a guy or a girl. But of course, Love comes in with some replicants, blows up the place a little bit, takes Deckard in, and leaves Kay for dead. Of course, he is taken by the Resistance, which is luckily there by coincidence. And they heal him up, and the lead Resistance woman named Freysa? Is that her name? Freysa, yeah, Freysa. She tells him how they've been working so hard to keep the secret about the identity of Deckard's daughter, which completely shatters Kay's assumptions. And she realizes that Kay thought he was the child, saying that at one point everyone in the Resistance thought they were Deckard's child. But that still gives them hope that if a replicant can't be naturally created, that makes them the masters of their own destiny and such, which gives them motivation to fight back against Wallace. And they give him a gun and tell him that Deckard has to be killed so that Deckard doesn't tell Wallace where to get to the other Resistance members. And so we have our meeting between Deckard and Wallace. And during this conversation, it seems like Wallace is confirming that both Rachel and Deckard were actually made for the sole purpose of making a connection, falling in love, and making a natural born replicant. But then he ends with, if you were designed that way. So the whole question of whether or not Deckard is a replicant or not is still very much in the air. And so he entices him by saying that he can give him whatever he wants, and he brings in a duplicate version of Rachel. Like, that's actually a clever move on Wallace's part, trying to entice him. But then Deckard makes the inaccurate statement of saying Rachel's eyes were green, when that wasn't true. I guess that's Deckard's way of not connecting with this new Rachel. So they end up just killing this one on the spot, and they begin transporting Deckard to some other location. They don't really specify where, but that's apparently where they're going to try to force him to tell them where to find the people who know where the child is. Of course, as they're traveling over the ocean to go to this location, Kay comes in his own car, shoots two of the vehicles down, the one that has Love and Deckard on it, sort of make a crash landing just on the shore of the city and the ocean. And so a big fight breaks out between Love and Kay, and it seems like Kay is dead as Rachel goes back to the car that's still floating, drifting off a little bit into sea. But then Kay comes in, begins choking Love, effectively drowning her, freeing Deckard, and bringing him back to the shore. Deckard's like, you should have left me for dead. But Kay's like, but that way you won't be able to meet your daughter. And that pretty much takes Deckard by surprise, because he didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. And Kay says that now both Wallace and the Resistance think you're dead, so he can actually live his life. And so Kay takes Deckard to the dream making facility, tells him to go inside, and Kay sits on the steps of the building and snow is falling down. And we take a look at the wounds that Rachel caused, and he dies. You know, after thinking about it, Kay is a lot like Ray from the first Blade Runner movie, both seeking something bigger and realizing that that's out of their reach, but still somehow dying with peace, somewhat. And it's actually kind of symbolic and kind of beautiful. And the movie ends with Deckard seeing his Dr. Staline, his daughter, through the mirror window thing. She says she'll be with him in a minute, and he puts his hand on the glass and smiles, and that's where the movie ends. You know, now that I think about it, I don't really think they explained how exactly they came to the realization that Dr. Staline is Deckard's daughter. I think I might have missed that part, but I don't remember them ever actually saying it. But hey, I'll take it because I actually did think Kay was Deckard's son, but nice plot twist anyway. So that's Blade Runner 2049. How is it? It's pretty good. However, that could also be the film's downfall. It's only pretty good. I mean, keep in mind, even though the first Blade Runner movie is considered a cult classic today, that's what it is, a cult classic. It didn't do very well back when it was first released, and that's what's beginning to look like for Blade Runner 2049. Yeah, critics love it, and so do audiences and the fan base of the original Blade Runner movie, but it's beginning to look like that Blade Runner 2049 is going to be a bomb. And if you think about it, that's actually goes hand in hand with how the first Blade Runner movie went. And really, this isn't a franchise that's meant to like be big and have like money and such. It's a franchise that's meant to be relevant, to ask questions about humanity and morals and even religious ones apparently, thanks to Mr. Wallace's strong opinion that he is a god. But even though it may not be the typical action-fueled movie that you think it is still a very good movie. Granted, like Honest Trailer said about the first Blade Runner movie, it's crime noir with robots. That's an accurate statement for this one, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It may not be your cup of tea if you're more like a watching a Marvel movie kind of fan, but if you really want to see a thoughtful movie with real depth and questions about love and life and what it means to be human, then this is the movie for you to check out. And that is my review of Blade Runner 2049. Obviously, I very much like it, even though I do acknowledge that it's not going to do that probably well financially. Well, what do you guys think? Comment down below. Like, share, subscribe. Dr. Cinema. See you next time.